Yes. 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 Welcome. Welcome. Welcome again to another edition here. I am Zero Ends. And today, as you see the title, the thumbnail, all the goodies, the goodies, we are going to. Let me pause that. Sorry, guys. We are going to begin the very first chapter of and the title. As I pull this up. Hold on, guys. Let me pull it up. Pull this up. The title is Black Women Sold Out in Slavery, Chapter 1, Part, and I mean part loosely, 1. And as you know, I'm here with the lovely one and only Miss Queens of Virtue, the virtuous one. See the
Mhm.
black, see the purple, see the black lipsticks. You know what I'm saying? Chanel, it would be lovely, sweetie, if you had like the purple lipstick as well. But I'm not gonna judge. I'm not gonna judge. You know what I'm saying? You're the fashion expert, so you know what I'm saying. But I'm here with the queen today, and we're gonna go
Hello,
into it.
everyone.
Yes, yes, yes. And those that will catch the broadcast. Um. Oh, as y'all know, like I said, this is a new series. It's like always, I repeat it, like the video and share. Now there's no donations at this time because this is just a barely growth channel for now. All the other details in time we'll work through it, but right now we're only focused on grabbing attention, getting response, having the conversation and the overall looks of this. And as you know, I'm not no stranger to controversy personally. um but like always, this is something that has to be examined. This is roughly that's been going on throughout manosphere, logic, talk, etc. And trust me, to find information like this that women so took part in the slave trade is, to me, I don't think it's really new information per se, in my opinion. And the reason why, because everybody took part in the slave trade. If you look at the early parts of African history or world history, very few African queens fought against the enslavement of our people. One particular famous woman was Queen Nzinga. You're familiar with her, Queen's Virtue? Queen, you there? You muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm familiar with her.
Yeah. She was one of the few queens of Angola, I believe, at the time, fought the Portuguese for the later part of the 16th century and have done it very well up to her days on this earth. And she was probably only one of the very little women of that time that fought against the so-called stage of the Atlantic slave trade. But like I said, knowing that women did took a part in the slave trade is a dark history, that something that has to be looked at and examined in full context to understand the ins and outs and why, personally. So, but we're not gonna hold much time. We want to get to this reading at hand, as y'all know. And like always, please share this stream. And this will be a little bit better than last time because I was able to get it right, hopefully. As you could tell. Let me see. Is this zoom in too much? Is this zoom in too much, Chanel? Let me look at this. I think that's good enough. You can see that, right?
Um, actually, let me see.
Mm-hmm.
Can you zoom in a little bit more?
Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more. All right. Give me a second. Let me see if I can zoom in. Oh yeah, no, I do it. Okay. Oh, it's already zoom in. Oh, damn. If I zoom in too much, it's gonna be look like this. All
It
right.
looks fine. on my end.
All right, good, good. I think it's too close, but
Okay.
in my minute, and this is very lengthy. So, um, okay, so that copy. Let me make sure I got the link to the stream. All right, I'll try to scroll down as much. Actually, no. Let me do this, Chanel. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to paste this here. As you go through it, I'm going to do some things because I have two devices as always. Um, so I'm going as you read. I'm gonna keep scrolling down so you're able to follow through. All right,
Okay.
all right. Give me a second, because guys, before we start, I had to get everything in order. Yeah. Oh damn, I don't want that. All right. All right. I'm just trying to paste this. Oh, where is this? Oh, guys. There we go. The time said it. Knock all this out the way before anything. Okay, I think we should all set. So as y'all go, I'm probably gonna send notifications. Let's begin. You may begin, Miss Chanel Shalom.
Okay. Setting up in 1700, the village of Osu amounted to fewer than 100 family compounds spread out along rows of trees and broad paths that led down to the beach and the Danish fort. The clay and thatched dwellings consisted of smaller huts arrayed around interior courtyards with long roofs that extended over the street. During the heat of the day, people sat beneath them on clay benches, watching the comings and goings in the village. In the morning and again in the evening, Gao women carried their goods and foodstuffs to and from their stalls in the market square, from which they sold fresh, dried, salted, and cooked fish, palm wine, kinky, fufu, or other prepared meals, and cloth and beads. Almost all the sellers in the market were women. They were renowned for their skill and industry as traders, and people came from near and far to the market.
All right. And now
Some
there's
buyers
no. You're right. You're good. Go ahead. Somebody said.
Some buyers were villagers or people from nearby towns on the coast. Others were farmers from farther inland, bringing baskets of oranges, limes, bananas, sweet potatoes, and yams, millet, maize, rice, pepper, chickens, eggs, bread, and other foodstuffs, which they exchanged for fish or European products that could be found only on the coast. A final small group of buyers were white men from the Danish fort down on the beach. Perhaps Coco Osu and her friends watched when France Boy arrived in Osu in February 1700. It was only a short walk from their compounds to the beach, where fishermen's canoes rested and where Europeans would land after months of sailing. European ships did not come in often, so it was a big event when they did.
All right. Let's see. Big event. Okay. Let me go down. Let's go down. Coco would
Coco
have.
would have known. Mhm.
Go
Coco
ahead. Go
would
ahead.
have known about Europeans. Her father, Tet Osu, was a powerful man. The Europeans called him Kabusir, and his and he made a living trading with them. Maybe Coco and her friends sat on the warm cliffs and watched as the men stepped out of their canoes and onto the beach for the first time. Perhaps they compared notes and made bets about which among the new arrivals would survive the longest in Africa. Far from uh, the ship or the tea ship left the coast, all Europeans made it. Some stayed only until the next some stayed only until the next. Many got sick and some died. Cocoa was a casseret to France not many years after that. Ted Osu had probably concluded that France would be good, be a good trading ally, which he was, but the marriage was at least as important for the Dane. Over the next
Decade.
uh, decades, he did extremely well in Africa. Surviving on the coast was itself an achievement that could mean rapid advancement, but marrying into one of the most powerful presents to the king of how do we say this? Akwamu.
Yep.
Within 6 years, he was appointed chief assistant at the fort, and by the time he was appointed governor in 1711, he was well acquainted with several African languages as well as the Portuguese language,
France.
France,
France.
okay, of the coast. By that time, Koku and France had one child together, who was followed by another, a son who bore the very Danish name David Franson. He, like their marriage, was born of the trade. In the first generation of Kasar marriage in Osu, Ga women and Danish men were much more foreign to each other than Severin and Edward were a century and a half later. Both Koku's parents were African, and it is highly unlikely that she wore European clothes or owned European goods and furniture. Both
Mm-hmm.
Coco and France came from families of traders. France had grown up in Copenhagen, Coben, Copenhagen,
Mm-hmm.
meaning Gents Harbor, which had been a trading center since the Middle Ages. They even had a culture of smoked and salted fish in common. Yet to recognize the similarities, they would both have to look beyond vast cultural differences. At least one of them had to adjust to the other's culture. And since they were in Osu, and since Europeans were fully dependent on their African trading partners in the early 18th century, it was mostly France who adjusted. Even more important, Danish men relied on African women not only to succeed in trade, but also humblingly and immediately to survive.
All right. Let me pause. Let me take over for a minute. The Kasarian marriage largely happens on initiative of the Gao, who were interested in and accustomed to integrating foreign Africans, primarily Akan, which is Ghana, and European traders into their kingship groups. They made trading and political connections with Europeans by marrying their daughters to setting up 21 of them, and both of the genders settlements partnered and division of labor, or patterns of division of labor, sorry, in the God community, as well as the practice of adopting children of absence or deceased fathers made the integration of foreigner men easy. So I think I'm not sure they're talking about African men died. So the foreign people took on as, maybe stepdaddies, possibly. Let's keep going. The men at Chris Tallenberg, in turn, depends on relationships with an African kingship group. The process of overcoming cultural displacements when settling in Africa was not going to happen at the fort, but in Osha, and having a steady relationship with Ga women was crucial importance, and marriage have an important story to tell about the family's generationalized or generational productions of racial difference in the slave trade, which we will turn to the last section of the chapter. Oshu, like Christianberg on the beach nearby, grew up with the trade. The village or town, as it would soon become, was one of the numbers of Gal village along a 20-mile stretch of the eastern Gold Coast that had been settled in the 17th century. After the Gaul kingdom of Ayazua was conquered and destroyed by the Akawana, and remember these are African terms, so we might butcher names. Bear with us, people. Besides farming and fishing, the Gaul from the earliest years made their living as intermediaries in trade between Europeans and political powerful groups of Akan. Now that's African people, mind you. Speaking people further inland, such as Asante, Akawanmo, and Akayan, until the late 17th or early 18th century, gold was the majority import from the Gold Coast in the 18th century. The Atlantic slave trade became the most important by far. God and other coast traders brought European commodities inland and exchanged them for enslaved people whom they brought with them back to the coast to sell to Europeans. And before we continue, pause for a second. The question always asked is, how is it possible? And these questions every person asks is that these African men were able to get so lovey-dovey with European men. Do you know, Chanel?
No, I don't know.
Because it takes certain, as go for the men first to get to the woman, correct?
That's true.
So how is it that men have died and then these European play stepdaddy? Now, we always hear about, what most of us brothers said, we not being no stepdad. You hear this constantly, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure what your views on stepfather. If you want to, you can elaborate now before I continue.
Um, I think that they're only necessary if the biological father is dead.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I agree. I agree. So at this time, it made sense. But like I said, why was no any other African man stepping in to taking on responsibility of helping and aiding these children, these God children? Why I'm finding
That's a good
European men?
question. Mm-hmm.
That's the question that always came to my mind. And one of the few things I highlight here, because this is off from what we're reading right now, is it says here Danish and other European men had almost no direct support from European colonials or trade institutions in the early decades of the Gold Coast. And mind you, that was known for what they went and found in that part of Africa, gold. And I think it's the most gold in that part of Africa, if you want to keep 100. Um, Therefore, the Africans were built with permission from African rulers and their survival on the mercy of the African trade partners. That's why I highlight. So, in saying this, that there's no way hell these men will have the leverage they need. And you don't hear much about knives, physical weapons in the early parts of this chapter. Have you heard yet? Any wars yet? No. You don't hear that, right? No struggle, right? Chanel?
No.
So it seemed to me some of these African kings or some of that power was fighting with other Africans met across another adversary to partner up to help in regards to attaining more power, which is always known and accustomed to man's existence. He's always seeking power. So I'm not sure
True.
where women play in regards to the slavery of African men and women and children yet, but this is like the early parts of this chapter. But let me keep going. I'm gonna give it to you. People on the Gold Coast has been trading with European men at least since the late 15th century. Okay, that's 1600s, I think. When Portuguese traders had begun tapping into an already well-developed commercial economy in the West Africa from the sea, and there's a picture of that. When Danish, West Indian, and Guinean companies arrived in the 17th century, the Dutch English, French, and Swedish companies were already competing in the West African trade, and later arrived to Europe or the North Europe trade adepts. Many practiced in patterns from their Portuguese predecessors. The Portuguese at the first function as a fully developed lingua franca in the trade between Europeans and Africans, and practice lived on for centuries in the shape of Portugal or Portuguese loan words and phrases, including, most important for this study, casar for marriage, from casar means to marry, casar. Case or casa for house, from the Portuguese casa, and that's Spanish, mi casa, my house. If you're not familiar with Spanish, casa. Cabotier for head or chief, from the Portuguese cabacer, and negra for African. From Portuguese negro, meaning the meaning of the 22, and I don't know this figured. The market at Cabo Carso of 1602, the population of Cape Coast grew from around 100 inhabitants in the 1555 to around 3 or 4,000 in the early 18th century. The rest of the coast also saw a significant, not quite a drastic increase in the urban base, unfamiliar population between Islo and 1650. De Marie Petre, 62. Black. This term was adopted by Danes and other Europeans as a term of Africans trades between Europeans and Africans. Was intense on the Gold Coast. During the 17th and 18th century, 60 European forts and lodges were established along the coast, and the political situation and power balance in the coastal regions changing constantly. However, European traders who arrived in West Africa always had to accommodate to the African societies. Hear that? Let's read it again. However, European traders who arrived in West Africa always had to accommodate to African societies they encountered. Europeans who built forts or lodges on the coast did so with permission from the local African rulers. Europeans who built forts, lodge, and coasts did so with permission from the local African rulers, who required tribute as a prerequisite for goods, trades, and relationships. I'm going to continue, but before I let you continue, and we're going to start off as Portuguese. That's what you're going to continue to read. Like I said before, where is it that it said these women rule Africa? Do you see that, Chanel?
Yes.
Are you reading these books? I'm not even near the halfway of chapter of this book, and right there it states right there, you cannot come in and do anything. You cannot build or trade without my assistance. You must ask what? The man what? Permission. So what the are they talking about? Now, when we hear about in Africa, they said it's a matriarch, right? That's what they go around talking, right? This shit, right?
Yes.
Where is matriarchy in the decision of making other foreigners come here and build, set forth, and trade? Shouldn't women be involved? Say yes, you could do this by my permission. Did that? What? That's what it said. That's not what it said, right? Mm, 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 mm. Mm, 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 mm. Wow. That says it all, Chanel. I think we're done for the chapter. No, I'm joking. But I let that sit well and let that sink in for those that's gonna catch this broadcast. Anyway, Chanel, if you do mind, Read.
Yes, sir. Okay. As Portuguese and all other European traders in West Africa understood, trading on the coast required close connections to both inland rulers and the coastal middlemen they supplied. Danes had been involved in long distance trading for centuries, at least since the early Middle Ages, the Viking Age, as the period is still referred to in Denmark, and Danish merchants had been interested in trading with uh is that AL Rich since early in the 17th century. They adapted the former's word let's see, Gund, to describe the area from the Gambia River to Campo Mong, with the Portuguese practice of describing areas of the coast after the primary products traded there. The Pepper Coast, the Ivory Coast, the Cold Canal, Camel, sorry, and the Slave Coast. The first Danish company trading in West Africa was started in the 1830s, but the Danes did not gain a steady presence on the coast could you scroll up a little for me? Until the 18th century. The Danish administration on the Gold Coast was, for the most part, the responsibility of chartered Danish trading companies, regulated at the top level by charters, Befoyer or whatever, I'm sorry, issued by the Danish king. Responsibility for maintaining and manning the forts was a regular point of conflict over the centuries, though ultimately the king's administration often took on the obligation. Fort Christiansborg was built by Swedes in 1893 and taken over by the Butch traders in 1868, then by the Danish West India and Guinea Company in 1881. From 1679 to 1883, the fort was briefly in the hands of the Portuguese after being sold to a merchant for 36 pounds of gold.
All right. Let me see. Where am I?
In 1888, the
Okay.
fort
Oh,
became the.
all right. Go ahead. Got it. All right. Go ahead.
In 1888, the fort, now I kind of lost. Sorry. The fort became the Danish headquarters on the coast, and during the 18th century, the fort was by far the biggest of the Danish trading forts on the Gold Coast. In the early years, the fort consisted of about half a dozen living and storage rooms that could not be defended against any attacks, but it became more substantial as the Danish slave trade expanded during the 18th century. From a tiny and unstable beginning, the Danish trading companies managed to gain a fragile, unenforceable monopoly on the trade as eastward from Osu as far as Kita, and through a chain of 9 subordinate forts and lodges. Between 1868 and 1806, the Danish ships brought about 85,000 enslaved Africans across the Atlantic, a few miles west of Osu.
All right.
Could you scroll?
All right. There we go.
Mhm.
Oh, so both the English and the Dutch has Amelia forts. You continue right here.
Their own headquarters were farther off
1868. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
in Cape Coast and Elmina, respectively. I'm sorry, something just popped up on my screen and covered up everything. Each of these European trading posts in the Asura area developed trading relations with one or more of the local Ga towns. During the 18th century, these settlements were known as Oau, I don't know how to say it, or O, Danish Asera,
Mm-hmm.
Soko, English Accra, and Ac- Aprag,
Mm-hmm.
Dutch Sarah. Since they were competitors in the slave trade, the nearby Europeans were both potential rivals and cultural peers for the Danes. During peacetime, they paid social visits to the other forts, but they were often at odds with one another, which led to disagreements and sometimes even hostile confrontations. However, trade required successful dealings with African trading partners. Indeed, during the slave trade, it was a common saying among Europeans on the Gold Coast that heaven was high and Europe far away. Late in the 18th century, Danish surgeon and travel writer Paul Isert
Mm-hmm.
used the
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to
could you
find where you.
at the very bottom.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. All right. Sorry. Go ahead. All right. Use
Okay.
express to commit on a style of the government of Christenberg, comma, where the governor was so far from his superior authorities that he could rule the trading post as a despot with. Period.
Out fear of any retaliation measures. Another Dane, Chaplain H.C. Monrad, believes the saying suggested that it was easy to cheat and to trade in illegal and inhumane ways when trading so far away from home. The saying echoes a feeling many European men must have had on the Gold Coast that both familiar authorities and familiar ways had little relevance to their daily lives. In the 17th century, the Danes' position on the Gold Coast had been even more precarious. In 1672, 15 years after the Danes had first settled on the Gold Coast at the small fort of Fredericksburg, it was indeed difficult for the Danes to maintain contact with heaven, Europe, or any other superior authority. There were only 8 Danish men left at Fredericksburg and 3 at Christiansborg when Governor von Gronstein described the situation in a letter to the Danish king, Christian the Fifth. That's the fifth,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. Christian the fifth. Yep.
Our situation here worsens day by day and will worsen all the more if the company got to sit cannot be got to send men here for the coming spring of 1673, for then we and HRM's, His Royal Majesty's stations, will be in great peril of being lost. We cannot live here with empty hands under a barbaric nation that keeps neither faith nor promises, nor are we able un- in an open station to defend ourselves against them. The governor continued that the Dutch and the English would be of no help if the Danes were attacked, since they would like nothing better than to see us dispossessed. When Governor Prange or Prang arrived on the coast in 1681, the Danish establishments in Africa teetered on the edge of failure. Christiansborg had been sold, and Fredericksburg, following a series of deaths had fallen under the control of first one and then another self-appointed interim governor, who, setting up 25, reportedly squandered all the company's wealth on whores and other frivolities. The only Danish subjects remaining at the fort were 2 young Norwegians, one of whom offered an account of what had happened. After Governor Kroll died, Assistant Matthias Hansen and had taken control of the fort with support from the Negroes, to whom he had given so many gifts that they would make him general. Hansen lasted 5 weeks as governor until where did it go? I
Another
lost
assistant
it.
until another assistant.
Okay. Okay, another assistant, Peter Valk, convinced the blacks to shift their allegiance to him, and with the help of 100 men, he overwhelmed the fort. Peter Valk thereafter sent Matthias Hansen to the Dutch at Elmina and ruled Fredericksburg in a bestial manner for 4 months until we whites, the two surviving Norwegians, asked the king of Vetu for help. The king then sent his men to the fort to seize Peter Valk, according to Andreas Jacobsen.
Hmm.
The king of Fetu at this point suggested that Jacobsen become general. The king came into the fort and asked if I now wish to be general, otherwise he would appoint his son. Peter Valk was still in Fetu when the new governor Magnus Prang arrived from Copenhagen, but it is unclear whether he was there as a captive or was staying voluntarily. In an undated and rather confused letter from Fetu, all the way at the bottom.
Okay. Fetu from Fetu. Lockett wrote. Good.
Okay. Valk wrote to Fredericksburg requesting to be allowed to stay with the heathen, but nevertheless added that he would like to come to the coast if only he had the opportunity, though he knew he would be arrested. He claimed that his reason for writing was to request that clothes be sent to Fetu since he had more than a torn shirt and trousers left. But he went on to ask for ink and paper, a small pot of brandy, and a little tobacco. Whatever Peter Valk was doing in Fetu, it is interesting to note that the king of Fetu not only could decide who was going to be in charge at the Danish fort, but also had a say in how long they stayed in power. While assistant Peter Valk was in Fetu, Governor Prang died. This left Fredericksburg in the hands of the German Johann Conrad Busch, who had started his career on the Gold Coast in 1673 as a cadet in the Dutch West Indian Company at Elmina.
All right, stop.
Hans Light. Okay.
Stop. Stop. Hands of a German named Jonathan Conrad Busch. General German Jonathan Conrad Busch. Can I highlight this?
This left Fredericksburg in the
Hold
hand.
on. I don't know why this is turning on. Fuck it. Hold on, guys. All right. John Hanner. Now, all right. Y'all get the point. Bush. Jonathan Conrad Busch. Jonathan Conrad Busch. Who's a Bush? Chanel. Does that sound
Who
familiar?
the Bush?
Bush.
Yes. That sounds familiar.
The Bush is Germans. They're Germans.
Oh, are they?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, the hands of German Jonathan Conrad. I'm gonna go Google that. These are Bush. Bushes are Germans. Is anybody aware of that? We'll look into that later. But let me read on. Hans Leike, who was soon to become intern governor, reports to the West Indies and Guinea Company that Bush had been constantly drunk for 8 days, had shot off about 800 pounds of powder for no reason, had given the company best Pangea and gold away to whores and strangers, and had treatments to kill whoever approaches him. Not only was the situation bad for the employee, but at the fort, but the king of Fete was also upset about the governor's behavior and threatened to stop supplying the Danes with the millet and water they need to survive. Hans, in all matters, like he ascribes to some of the Bush of misbehavior to his marriage to a young mulatto woman from Damenia, who then dissolute the governor said was to decide this young woman whose name was not recorded and the source had apparently benefited materially from her marriage to the Bush. And there was a dismiss from office and secret counsel also arrested of his wife to restore nothing of the street or the secret counsel could do to stop her. When Bush was arrested, his debts to the company, but they had to let her go again soon after when the great Copperkirsch or Copperseer and the king of Fitu declared that since she was Bush, with everything had given her rightful belongings to her. Like he tries to reason with the king Copperseer, asserting that the goods that Bush had given to his wife belonged to the company and had not been Bush to give away, but he had to admit that the company couldn't do nothing to get the good back, as they would do many times in the following centuries. Danish traders opted not to press this inherently political issue further. They lacked the resource to exert real power on the coast, and by stressing their points, they only risked harming the balance of trade. The Danish slave traders, strong to remain on good terms with the African trade partners throughout their times on the coast. In 1685, when the Danish West Indies Guinea Company headquarters was moved from Fredericksburg to or in Fitu, the Christiansburg and Oshu, the coastal areas was controlled by the king of Aquamo. The king of Aquamo, whose capital Nyena was, lay about 20 miles inland from Akora. Let the Ga continue their daily trade with the Europeans, but demand that the Ga Capriciers pay tribute to him. Whether the dance cultivates these with the king of Futu and Fredericksburg, the king of Akora, or the king of Akuma, they had to do so by sending gifts, maintaining good relationships with the king Kapsira, and behave diplomatically. Local contacts were essential as Danish. Hold on, guys. This is getting annoying now. Sorry about that, guys. All right. Where was I? And the gate continued to trade a European, but demanded that the god Copson paid tribute to him. Whether the Danes cultivate with the king of Fitu at Fixenberg, the king of Akura, or the king of Akamor, they had to do so by sending gifts, maintaining good relationships with the king of Kabasurs, and behaving diplomatically. Local contacts were essential. As the Danish governor Andre Pedersen Horn puts in 1733, and which this is what he states in his words: "It is impossible to expect any trade at a fort below, next to which no Negroes live." Slave trading was an unpredictable and complicated business, required violence, warfare, or enslavement of prisoners. Despite periods of relative calm, the Gold Coast was therefore a region in turmoil, suffering from the effects of direct warfare, rumors of war, conflict between Akan states, conflict within the states, the conflict among or the European competitors in the slave trade. Most enslaved Africans sold during the slave trade on the Gold Coast were war captives or people who had been kidnapped by raiding parties from the northern inland part of what is today Ghana. Get that? A smart man bus a ship of a plana capina marta, setting up 27 numbers of the people sold to Europe. Slave ships had lived as slaves on the coast prior to their sale. And as even small numbers came from free African families of the coast, 23 slaves captured in war or kidnapped were sold at the slave market in the north and brought by middlemen who brought them to the European forts on the coast. European traders were dependent on the Ga, Akan, and Fante, middlemen who brought European goods with them inland to exchange for slaves. Stop. Let's stop right there. I know I've been reading a lot and give you all a pause and breathe. Whew. There, in the first chapter alone, and there's going to be many chapters, but so far, there's no way in God's green earth, when we talk about how they were your property or the stage of enslavement, where you find women are doing most of the work of kidnapping and selling your black ass. Now, to me, Chanel, if you're there, you there, sweetie? Hello, hello.
Yes, sir.
To me,
You hear me?
yeah, okay. To me,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm trying to find and understand this is what importance and seriousness. And this is what my thing is. I think this is all about clicks and views and made some money while this gender war still keeps going, in my opinion. There's
Mm-hmm.
probably some profitable over this bullshit. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
present this is the books that say this is the black woman who was complacent and she sold your ass in this and that. Okay, but who is assisting or who's the players to allow this black woman or you call this black bitch that a lot of them like to use secretly shows that she sold your black ass? I'm still confused. Are you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm confused right now. I don't see nothing in the history, and I'm not saying women play any role. They probably play some role here in
Mm-hmm.
America because America is at the time most of our people were brought here. Regardless, they said some of us were here already. I hear that a lot. Not denying that, but majority of this country was ruled and controlled by white people during the inception of America in its creation of 1776. And I'm still trying to understand and really conceptualize what these niggas are putting out here as information. I have the question: is this now pseudoscience, Chanel?
What's pseudoscience? What does that mean?
They like what I'm hearing from like these niggas about the role of black woman. Like she played more major role than anything else of the disenfranchisement and oppression, incarceration of the black man from back then to now.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm starting to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm starting to conclude, and I'm not seeing it so far in this. And we're only going to reach the first part half of this chapter one. Now there might be more chapters to go that's going to probably lay its claim, but right now I'm not impressed. Right now, are you?
Well, it's interesting.
Mm. Let me drink my water, man. If I continue reading. Anyway, all right, where am I? To ensure that the African middlemen came back with slaves rather than running off with their goods, European traders adopt an African pawn system in which African middlemen will leave an item, a gold iron or other valuable goods, or a person over whom they had authority, a family member or an enslaved person, as a pawn at the fort while they travel inland to buy slaves. At Christenberg, the Danish administrator keeps long lists of pawns, goods, and persons whom African traders had left in Danish custody until they return. For the European traders, human pawns had almost immediate monetary value. If the pawn was not redeemed within a set time limit, the administration considered it their right to sell the pawn, which made the practice of human pawing more immediately threatening for African families participating in the Atlantic slave trade. And at Christiansburg, enslaved people wanted in the dungeons for a slave ship to arrive. It was both expensive and difficult to keep people healthy in the dark, unsanitary dungeons, and many became sick and died before the ship arrives. I'm gonna let you continue reading. Where it says over and over again.
Okay. Over and over again, Danish governors noted the difficulties of planning the trade in human beings and complained to the company in Copenhagen, which particularly in the early years appears to have had little understanding of how the slave trade worked. In 1703, Governor Hartvig Meyer, for instance, complained to the administration in Copenhagen about their instructions to always have a shipload of slaves ready when a Danish ship arrived on the coast. The administration suggested that the Danish traders make trading deals ahead of time with traders in the area and bring the slaves as soon as the ship came in, to which Governor Meyer replied with some annoyance that trading on the Gold Coast was not like trading at home. The supply of slaves could not simply or consistently match the demand. It would be several decades before the Danes became efficient and profitable slave traders. And even then, the slave trade was never an easy business. The Danes' dependence on their African trading partners on the god
Hold on.
should be let me see. I don't know how to pronounce this word. Enough either drunk or sober to kill a snake. He would
Get away.
get away with his life, and the Negroes should see it.
In such a case.
Okay, I kind of lost my place. Let me see if I can find it. Where did it go? Okay. Can you put your mouse on it? Because I have no idea where it's at.
If I put it, it's gonna play audio. I don't want that. That's why.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see it at the top. In such a case, the nation of Christianborg would probably not be of much help. They were not interested in working in the interests of the trading partners. They were in Africa, or I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out what that was supposed to say. To trade, not to colonize in this pre-colonial encounter during the slave trade. The Kasar mammies were fundamentally important for the European survival and well-being in the Oga women nursed their Danish husbands through it. Their money fed them and made sure they got the best track. The local Danish traders at Christianborg were quick to realize the importance of the marriages, and if the West Indian and Guinea Company in Copenhagen had outlawed the Kasar marriages, they would probably have met a lot of resistance. As it was, the company made only one early attempt to completely prohibit sexual relations with African women, avoiding one of marriage. Specifically, the ban on all sexual relations with Anhan women came in after Governor Front Boy wrote to the company in Copenhagen asking how to deal with employees who were mixing with African women. Boy asked if the employees in Africa should be expected to follow the same rules as other real military officers in Denmark. Boy immediately reason for posing the question was that some of the men who were sleeping with African women also wanted to attend church, which had concerned the chaplain at Christianborg Boy, boy, is it Boyle? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Boyle's own opinion, as expressed to the company, was that it would be impossible to keep the men from having sex with women in Osu. To enforce a complete restriction, he would have to keep the men inside the fort on their days off, which Boy found unthinkable. Boy, who was a casseret to Coco at this point, doubted that a single man would stay in the company's service if he was not allowed to sleep with African women. But despite Governor Boy's forecast, the company's first response was to ordain that any man found mixing with African women should be punished. The
Stop.
first time.
Before we continue,
Mhm.
I'm gonna rewind back. You hear a term they use called the mammies, and it was called
Yes.
mammies for white men. You follow that?
Mhm.
The term mammy has been used a pretty long time, isn't it, Shay? You know,
Mhm. Right.
I'm not sure why these fucking women keep calling U.S. black women or anything that respect and love black women, because that's who you rock with, mammies.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm telling you personally, because you're up there in age, just like me. If anyone,
Mhm.
any bitch, tell you your mammy, because you have some respect and dear heart love of, I guess, the black man or your opposite counterpart, you must tell them
Mhm.
to go screw themselves.
Mhm.
Because the word mammy has not been used since the days of slavery we know in America. It's been
Right.
used longer, and I mean longer than this. This is going on in the 1600s. They didn't have no such thing as called mammies. Well, they had mammies probably in American slave, but we think it was only an American thing. No. Oh no, no, it's not. It's much deeper than this. You know,
Mhm.
they've been referred to black women, and we're not sure if black women were fat, which they weren't back then, back in the days, because there was not a lot of fat black women. Which you see, my thing with a lot of black women today, kind of know we're gonna be off topic for a second, people, bear with me, is that you're not supposed to be super big. You're not supposed to be over 200 or more pounds. That's something new for the last couple of decades. We might have one family member that's big, but everybody else is skinny, correct?
Mhm.
But now you see out of some families, you see a couple more big, very little skinny, right?
Right. Right. That's how my family is.
Well, I'm not sure how many sisters you have on your side. You have
I
more,
have two older sisters. Mhm.
and how many in the rotation is like three sisters? What? What?
It's three of us.
Okay. Out of three, is one fat?
Um, Not at the moment. She lost weight.
Okay.
Mhm.
So let's say when I mean by fat, I'm not talking about that shit that these women talking about thick. I don't know what the fuck that is. Thick.
Mhm.
How thick is that? When I mean fat, she has a belly. Everything else is big, including her stomach. That's what I mean
No.
by okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So I mean she was not too big, but you could tell she put on some weight.
Right. Right.
Okay. And the reason why she lost weight is what, health reasons, or she just want to look good? Is there a reason?
I think it was more to look good.
All right, excellent. See, well, that's the thing most women need to think of. You're supposed to look good, but it shows clear evidence that we consume too much and
Mhm.
we don't. And exercise helps, but when you put on too much calories, it's hard to burn off, especially the amount of calories you're eating. A lot of us eat processed, refined foods. That puts
Mhm.
carbohydrates put weight on you. Vegetables, very little meat if you can, and some fruits don't keep weight per se on you. But when you start eating processed food and carbs, that's when you'll start gaining weight. Do you understand?
Yes,
And
sir.
and mind you, weight, like for yourself, and I'm on. Just follow me. Don't get mad. Like if I saw, only if I see if you was made a video and a picture, I could tell. But just find the pictures, and only could go as deep as how how you take it. You get me?
Mm-hmm.
That more portion of anything that's the weight on your upper chest. That is pretty much it. You get me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But everything else is fairly proportional, consistent. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, why I'm saying
I could
this,
use a little. I could use a little more booty though.
oh come on, come on, ladies. You gotta be satisfied. If God bless you for one thing, if you got it, you got it. You know what I'm saying, I mean, if you want that, you're gonna have to do those crazy, butt exercise. But I'm not pressuring. Don't worry about it. All right. But if you're mildly, at regular weight, that's good enough. You get me? A man
Mm-hmm.
has to be attracted to something. You get me? Now you hear men are attracted to many things, Chanel. You get me? And you got to understand how men think, what they want. You get me? There has to be something
Mm-hmm.
that gravity that's good enough. You get me? I tell most
Mm-hmm.
not everybody's gonna be blessed with one thing or the other. Personally, you know what I'm saying? But if you got one
Mm-hmm.
and not the other, that's fair enough. Now you can work on certain things to make things the other side bigger if you choose to. I tell most women don't do it because if you go that route, you gotta maintain that. Because after all, you don't do that, what's gonna happen?
What?
It's gonna turn fat,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's not accustomed to your body. You follow
True.
me?
Mm-hmm.
So if people say they want to get bigger behind, and they take supplements and they do serious butt exercise, that's fine. But the problem is you gotta be consistent with that. You cannot
Mm-hmm.
you cannot be relaxed, take too many long breaks because let's be honest, once you hit a certain age, all that is you start dependent on your metabolism. It could either slow down or maintain or go faster. And not every woman a certain age keeps a high metabolism once they hit around the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you never had kids. Now, when most people have kids, that changes. You get me? That really changes.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, if you're not a big person and you only got one unique thing about your body, that's good enough. And you don't want to be doing anything else crazy. But anyway, we're off topic. But let's continue. Where am I?
I think we're at the first time at the bottom.
All right, let me scroll down. All right, the first time a man was caught, he was to pay a fine of 1 month's salary. The second time, 2 months, and the third time, 4 months. In 1717, the company restates the importance of punishing men who were caught with African women, to which the secret council replies in a tone which considered that so many men of Christenberg, before and after themselves, had relationships with African women, sound rather mocking that the administration would ensure that any man, regardless of rank, found with an African woman, which or within or outside the fort, would be punished. We will not hereafter turn a blind eye, even less provide grounds for scandals by acting so over ourselves. However, this ban on sexual relations with African women was never enforced in Christenberg to begin with. Governor Boyce was probably not the most determined prosecutor. Hold on a second, guys. Mm, where am I? Okay, prosecutor of such a ban. Nor did the company of Copenhagen pay much attention to the ban execution. Just how little interest the company shows in the issue is apparent in a case against the very same governor, Boyce, for private trading while in company employment. I'm going to continue to read here. The case took place.
The case, okay. The case took place in 1717, the same year that the company, oh, I'm sorry. The same, okay,
Same year,
I lost.
the same
The
year
company
that,
restated its ban on interracial intimacy, but the detailed minutes from the case reveal no discussion of boys' own relationships with African women. The first witnesses in the case were called by the secret council at Christiansborg, who must have been aware of Boy's marriage to Coco. The fact that Boy's relationship with African women were not used in the case against him suggests that, compared to private slave trading, having sex with or casaring African women was not an important offense. At the very least, neither the governor nor the assistants in the council had any interest in throwing the first stone when they all lived in glass houses. As time passed, the administration of Christiansborg began to openly favor Khazar marriages. And
The company
in Copenhagen made no more attempts to enforce its ban. The secret council did occasionally complain about Khazar marriages to the company. For example, when connections between men from Christiansborg and their African wives' families interfered with or worked against the company's trade. Yet overall, the administration supported Khazaring, not surprising since any given time the governor themselves at a high number of the members of the secret council were casseret to women from Osu. The administration at Christiansborg supported the Khazar marriage, but the institution was initiated and developed around pre-existing African cultures. Danes used Khazar as a broad term for an African Marnays, only a marriage between a European and an African, and there is no question that the Khazar marriages in ritual as well as practice were more Africa commented that the celebration was no different from the one in in European. When Paul Isert described
no different from the one
when Paul Isert described Khazar. Okay. When Paul Isert described Khazar weddings in 1788, he described about the blacks and Khazar negotiations and ceremonies in Edward Carstenson's description of his negotiation with Caroline Trude's Osu does appear to have been very similar to other Ga marriages. Comparing for Severin's hand with descriptions of Ga marriages, for example, show many similarities in the number and nature of gifts, the calling of the bride, and the festivities following the wedding. A Khazar nuptial agreement with Ga and Akan marriages consisted of a payment of bride wealth from the masseries of payments of cloth, money, and drinks. The distribution of drinks to the woman's family, as in Ga marriages, the Khazar engagement included among the bride's relatives was the most important. Khazar marriages, like Ga marriages in early modern times, as it does is the present day, involved 3 stages: a marriage payment, bride wealth, as engagement, and a wedding. Ga marriage was usually initiated by the parents, usually the father of the groom, who received the bride wealth. This is, of course, was not possible in the case of the marriages with Danish men, since their families were far away. In any case, when a family had accepted a match, the groom gave the bride's parents a first gift to show that he was serious, and the bride wealth thereafter consisted of a series of gifts from the husband to the bride parents. If the engagement was broken off, The bride's family was expected to pay back the bride wealth. The last gifts were given at the wedding. The official handing over of the bride. The wedding party usually
Okay. Usually ended with a visit to the cap priest
ended with
and Osha.
an Osu.
Yep.
Kasar marriages developed as a social institution on the coast because Ga and other African families had an interest in making connections with foreign trades and integrating them into their kinship groups. Indeed, the Ga and Osu seem to have been particularly interested in and accustomed to integrating foreigners, at least from the time the central Ga kingdom in Iwasu fell to Akwamu in 1677. The Ga state fragmented into 7 towns along a ride.
On the ride,
Okay, I'm
ride with,
getting a little mixed up.
skip that. Along the settings ups of coasts, which each within
Okay.
with a number of closely connected small farming village islands. Continue. And these smaller.
These smaller towns and villages integrated a large number of foreigners, European and African, as well as foreign words, people, and material goods without much hesitation. How deliberately the Ga were engaging in a practice of what we might call ethnogenesis is not clear, but their social organization made the integration of foreign traders easy. One aspect of Ga life that helped the integration of foreigners was the Ga's polygamous
Parchileno, I think Parchileno clan. Mm-hmm.
patrilineal clans. Women and men lived in different households, meaning that the Kasar marriages did not entail setting up a new household. Often, the female and male compounds were connected to the same courtyard, but men and women ate and usually slept separately. When and if a husband wanted to sleep with his wife or one of his wives, if he had more than one, he would call for her to spend the night in his compound. Children were the primary connection between husband and wife, but food was another strong symbolic and practical connection.
Women were
Women Women were expected to cook for their husbands, while husbands were expected to support their wives and children with fish, meat, and produce for their subsistence or for them to sell in the market. Through most of the 18th century, when Ga women married Danish men, they did not move in with their husbands, who kept living at the Danish fort. This gender segregated living arrangement made it easier to integrate the foreign men. By comparison, in Denmark, as in most of Europe, integrating foreign men into important families would not have been nearly as simple, since inheritance, ownership, and rural production were organized around the conjugal couple living together. Not only was a heterosexual couple the center of the household in early modern Denmark, it was also the primary economic and legal unit, as well as the primary location of production in both farming and industry. The primary source of wealth in Denmark was land ownership, and keeping land within a family was one of the important functions of marriage. The 18th century Ga social world, on the other hand, was structured around a different and broader conception of kinship. Kinship ties could be formed through blood, adoption, or marriage, and when people were married or adopted in a kinship group, they in theory at least ceased to be foreigners. In West Africa, the size of a kinship group and the number of slaves was a more immediate measure of wealth than land ownership, which probably meant that Ga families were actively seeking to expand their families by integrating foreigners. Another factor making it easier for God families to let their daughters marry European men was that it was relatively simple for another of the women's male family members to assume paternal responsibility for the children if and when a European died or left Africa. Shortly after a child was in pre-colonial Osu, the parents would perform a naming ceremony in which the father assumed his parental responsibility and both parents, kin on the list of soldiers at Christiansborg, carried their father's name. So uh, groups recognize the child. Many of the children at the fort school and presumably the Danish men had recognized their what is that? I can't really see. Parentage.
Parentage, yeah.
Mm-hmm. If, however, a biological father would or could not take responsibility for his child, then another man in the mother's family could do it. Though until someone did, so the child was considered illegitimate. Like all other children, Euro-African children lived in their mother's compound until puberty, and they were integrated into their Goth families. Indeed, according to the Danish chaplains at the fort, the godmothers had far too much influence on their Euro-African. The gendered division of labor in Ga families also assisted in the integration of foreign men. Apart from trade, fishing was particularly important to people living in and around Osu. Men were responsible for fishing, whereas women did the preserving, cooking, and trading fish and children from their husbands, which in turn.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Let me see how much further left. Okay. Continue. In turn.
Okay. Meant that not only their families' other products meant that some women were economically quite independent, but they themselves had a direct and personal interest in the marriages to European traders. When God women married Danish men, they helped them settle as traders on the coast. In many ways, the married couples appeared to have been just as much trading partners as intimate partners. The marriages were, like most other marriages, both important economic and reproductive units. The separation of men and women in traditional God families did not mean that they had equal status in society. When accepting the bride's wealth, a woman's relatives recognized her husband's right to her domestic, economic, and sexual services. A wife was expected to perform domestic duties for the husband, to help him in his economic activities, and to abstain from sexual relations with other men, whereas husbands did not have the same responsibilities toward their wives. In a society where the struggle to control labor was more important to social organization than the right to own land, women's double role as producers and reproducers made them especially important. Most slaves in West African society were women, and whether women were given to other men as slaves, pawns, or wives, they had an immediate material as well as long-term productive and reproductive value. Yet, as in other African societies, the separate lives of women and men does seem to have given women significant economic autonomy from their husbands, allowing them to own property and trade independently from them. African women could take advantage of this.
Of the autonomy as well as seen in later chapters. The Kasari marriage were not only African in ritual and initiation by the god, but they were also largely controlled by the god. The story of Aksu and her three successive husbands from Christenberg suggest that how little control Danish men could have over their Khazar marriage in the early decades of the 18th century. Achu, I think that's pronounced right. If I butcher it, don't mind me, people. Was born in Asperg, Dutch Akura, but moved to Asu when she was married to Governor Frederick Pula at Christenberg in 1725. When he died in 1727, she was carcerated to another Danish employee, Christenberg, Berber surgeon Jonathan Randolph Muxel, or Muxel. After permission both from her friend, kin, and from Danish chaplain Hagard, who, according to Governor Adrian Welsman, blessed the union from the pulpit. Muxen died not long after the wedding, and the third Danish man, Sergeant Franz Karl Munichi, got permission from the Danish governor and Achun kin to Cassars her. Shortly after their wedding, Sergeant Munichi complained to the Danish government, claimed that Achun would not stay with him in Asu, but had run off to be with her family in Asprey. Governor Welsman then called Michun Achun together and urged both to live in concord and not cause me any problem. After this, according to Welsman, the negress and the sergeant agreed well with each other for a long time. Yet at the later point, Sergeant Michun again complained about Akun or Achun to the governor that this time after having heard rumor that she had been sleeping with other men. I tell you, doesn't this remind you of a particular person that people have been talking right now on social media and YouTube right now, Chanel?
Yes.
Ain't this a coincidence? Let's keep continuing. Governor Welsman urged Machun to investigate the accusations and promised that if Machun was guilty, those who had been involved with her would pay for it after customs of this country to investigate the question of Achun guilty. Sergeant Munichi had a Negro from the courtside perform a ceremony in the courtyard at Christenberg, drinking Adam above Achun's head, and he concluded that she was guilty of adultery. Her kins who were present at the ceremony protest the result, and governor said that the Adam and the man had brought was bad, and the Danish order that the man from the country who had brought this Adam and drunk it over her head should swear on oath, provided that Adam was good. And I'm not done. Let me pull up the book because I'm trying to remember where was this at. I'm speaking for a minute, Chanel, because I did highlight this because this is almost wrapping up the chapter. But I gotta be really certain.
You wanted me to read?
No, just talk a little bit. Talk a little bit.
Oh, okay.
All right. This is all right. 53. Okay, 53.
I don't know what to say, y'all. I'm sorry. I don't know how to improvise or ad lib or whatever they call it.
All right, so all right, let me find this. That's not it. Okay, found something. All right, 26. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. All right. I think I found it. Adam, go. Now I gotta find which part, and this is my concern. Where's Adam going? Mm. All right. Oh, so it's this page. Yeah, it has to be this page. Um, woman, sexual encounter without customary marriage took place in the insistence case. Danish man has sexual relations with enslaved women. Worked before exposed dungeons. Okay, I read that part. We read that part. All right. This is this one. Uh, uh, mm. Okay, well, shit. I did not highlight it properly. So, like I said, that this is the end of the part one anyway, guys. I'm not gonna go any further than that. Uh, like I said, part one of the chapter, and the chapter is titled. Move this here. The setup. Now, in quick rewind back summary of this, and let me stop sharing this. A quick summary of all of this is that there was certain punishment in a way if these men interact with African women. But as you know, as time moved further, you know, they started to be lenient and start to go away with the punishment with the fines. And as you know, with certain practice, certain women, that it's a known custom that you know they did assist a little bit. But see, the problem is that the only way they were going to be assistant is they had to be let into the parts of Africa, because as you know, women at the time were very family oriented. Even to the point where you know, when it comes to sex, it's very serious that they had to serve the men, do all this, etc. Like they will work with the African men as well. They follow customs. You get me? And one thing with the woman Achun, she's a well-known little whore in that part of Africa of them days. In them days, as you could tell. Not sure what her fate lies as we go into part two of this in the next stream, but it's pretty evident that so far, even going through this part chapter, I still am trying to find where these women were involved, putting your black ass enslavement. You know, matter of fact, if you really think about it, they only assist the men because they were in somewhat relationships in those territories.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them gained a certain leg up because of the trade relationship between the Europeans and the Africans, African men especially. You know, I just don't get where these guys are coming at with this about the women were involved. I think one thing why they use this book because they go by certain fucking scholars in certain space that they tell them about certain snippets in there and as present the evidence and they don't even read the book per se. And I know they're not reading. I'm reading it now for I can't say the first time because I've gone through the first chapters, but that was like months ago of last year. And I decided to put this down for a more important um for like the treasure chest, you know, what something I had to pull out to bring out and read for myself. But you know, so far I don't see no evidence yet. Have you?
Not quite yet.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we're going to, but so far I don't see nothing of any major finding that proves this that these women were solely the responsible, even to the point where they're the ones that caused the slave trade and enacted and made it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Still waiting for that. But like I said, I let you, the viewers, that is, be the judge of that. So, like I said before, people, I hope you enjoy this. And like always, you know, tune into the next stream. like always. Any closing remarks, Chanel?
No, thank you for having me back. Sorry that I was a little late
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah, yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, we know. That's what I'm saying. So stand by. I'm Chanel. All right, everybody.
Okay.
We'll talk again soon. Until next time, take care, people. All right. Where is my? Oh, take care.